Thank you for coming to Starbright Storytime. This is the overview of books for week 26. The first book we had was Night Night Little Pookie by Sandra Boynton. Cute little bedtime story about Mama Pig and Little Piglet and getting Little Piglet to bed. Night Night Little Pookie by Sandra Boynton. This is a board book, and it's a wonderful little short bedtime story. The next book on the list is Sassafras by Audrey Penn, illustrated by Ruth E. Harper. This is a lovely little story, beautiful illustrations. A story about a skunk who offends his friends with his odor. But he has to come to accept that he's a skunk and that skunks have odor as part of their defense. And he learns to accept himself as he is. Just as the bees have stingers, the skunk has its odor for protection. This is a nice storybook about self-acceptance. Sassafras by Audrey Penn, illustrated by Ruth E. Harper. The next book on the list is A Pocket Full of Kisses. This book also is by Audrey Penn. This one is illustrated by Leonard Gibson. This one is a story about raccoons, a little raccoon family. And Chester is the older brother, and he's really not happy about sharing with his younger brother, particularly when it comes to sharing his mother's love. He's afraid that his mother will stop loving him if she shows love for his younger brother. Which, of course, isn't true because a mother's love is unending. So this is a lesson he learns to accept through the story. This is A Pocket Full of Kisses by Audrey Penn, illustrated by Leonard Gibson. Next on the list of books is a book called I'm So Glad You Were Born, Celebrating Who You Are by Ainsley Earhardt, illustrated by Kim Barnes. This is quite the celebratory book. Bright, fun, cheerful illustrations. And of course the storyline is meant to celebrate the wonderful individual of each child. This could be a birthday book, but it is meant to remind children how unique and loved they are, and that they are beautiful just as they are, with their unique characters and individualism. Again, this is a book that celebrates the uniqueness of character. I'm So Glad You Were Born, Celebrating Who You Are by Ainsley Earhardt, illustrated by Kim Barnes. Next on the book list, we have Clarence's Topsy-Turvy Shabbat by Jennifer Zivia McLeod, illustrated by Jenny Poe. Clarence's Topsy-Turvy Shabbat. This book highlights the creativity of a little raccoon as he goes about his mission to do something nice on Shabbat, which is the day of rest. So Clarence decides that he wants to make some challah, which is a bread often shared on the Sabbath day. He's a little confused about the ingredients that need to go into the bread recipe. In the end, he has a wonderful team of friends. He is able to share in the chores and responsibilities of making the bread. And also he is able to share the bread with his friends at the Shabbat table. So it's a cute little story. Kind of introduces children to the meaning of Shabbat. Actually, some information in the book here about what it means to take a day of rest and to celebrate the work that we do. Clarence's Topsy-Turvy Shabbat by Jennifer Zivia McLeod. Illustration by Jenny Poe. Next on the list is a book called The Davy Rule, created by Robert McLeod, written by Olin Osbeck, illustrations by Shannon Darch, with educational materials by Les Rumel. Now, Davy is a dog. Davy's a whippet, and they are they like to run. They're very active dogs. And this book focuses on Davy the whippet and his love of the flying disc, otherwise known as a frisbee. It's his new favorite toy. And as he learns to use his favorite toy, how to catch it and anticipate its movement, the other dogs in the dog park have the opinion that his new toy is weird. And Davy insists it's just different. But the lesson of the book is that Davy encourages the other dogs to share with him what they like. And in doing so, he encourages the dogs to accept the fact that Davy likes the frisbee. Everybody likes their own kind of playtime, their own kind of toy. And just because it's different doesn't mean there's anything weird about it. It just means that we are all individual. So I think the overall intent of this book is to encourage inclusion as well as acceptance of things that may seem a little bit different or unusual, new. It's got cute illustrations. And it has a good lesson. And then in the back there are some pages for educational purposes, conversation starters, and a page here for parents and educators. I don't know if you're able to zoom in, if you wanted to pause. I'm not sure how clearly the text comes in on the videos. Anyhow, this is the Davy Rule, and if you are interested in finding a copy, you might be able to find it at your public library. It was printed in 2016, published by a company called Perigraph, Perigraph. There's also information you can find in the description box of the video of this book's reading. Also, if you wanted to order, you could visit thedavyrule.com. It's a cute book. The Davy Rule, created by Robert McLeod, and that is the dog's frisbee thrower. Written by Olin Osbeck. Illustrations by Shannon Darch, with educational materials by Les Rommel. And finally, the last book of week 26 is a book called Kiss Goodnight. And this is a sweet story about the relationship between mother and child, depicted with bears as characters. This book is by Amy Hest, illustrated by Anita Jerem. Soft illustrations. It's a very subdued storyline, storybook. It works very well as a bedtime story. And it sort of goes through the process and the steps of what this child expects for the bedtime routine. Children sometimes resist going to bed, and there are things we do to settle them into sleepy time. So this little bear has his own routine. And in the end, he's waiting and waiting and waiting for bedtime because he is waiting for his kiss goodnight. Very sweet. Also highlights the lovely relationship between a mother and child. The illustrations are very, I'd say, comforting. There's something very comforting about these illustrations. Anyway, this is Kiss Goodnight by Amy Hest, illustrated by Anita Jerem. The Davy Rule, created by Robert McLeod, written by Olin Osbeck, illustrations by Shannon Darch, educational materials by Les Rommel. Clarence's Topsy-Turvy Shabbat by Jennifer Zivia McLeod, with illustrations by Jenny Poe. I'm so glad you were born, celebrating who you are, by Ainsley Earhardt, illustrated by Kim Barnes. A Pocket Full of Kisses by Audrey Penn, illustrated by Barbara Leonard Gibson. Sassafras, also by Audrey Penn, illustrated by Ruth E. Harper. And finally, for week 26, Night Night Little Pookie by Sandra Boynton. I would just like to add that it looks like for week 27, I am hoping to do the week as a theme on dinosaur books. Dinosaurs for week 27. Thank you for coming to Starbright Storytime.